All right, so today's video is going to be about how to get publishing gigs on Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, and many other large publications. I've pretty much worked my butt off over the last year and a half to get on these things, and the crazy thing is, it's actually not as hard as people make it seem, or it's actually not that difficult as long as you follow certain steps. Today I have here Alex from SaaScribe, who's gonna be asking me a few questions on how to get started. The reason I'm recording this video, everyone, is that I get asked this question at least 5 times a day, and it's hard to repeat myself. I don't have the time, so I figured I'd record this video and so I can send it to people as well as let the world know. Alex, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sujan. Yeah, so I'm Alex, co-founder of SaaScribe, which is a publication for the SaaS community. So we've been doing SaaScribe about 8 months now. Probably published around 150 articles to date, but not really, only focusing on our own content. Haven't been doing any guest posts. I spoke with Sujan last week on our podcast. And I was one of the 5 that asked him that day, how do you write an article and get published for Forbes? Because I've noticed Sujan on there, in particular, and I think that's how I approached him, in the first place. So the question is, how do you get an article published for Forbes?
Yep. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to try to break this down into 5 simple steps. So simple, but time consuming and could be difficult. So there's some prerequisites. So one is you need to build yourself a personal brand, right? So before you even think about trying to go after guest posting, or it starts with guest posting and then it kind of works towards the large publications. But you need to present yourself in some sort of fashion where you look good, right? So have a professional Twitter account, build up some followers, engage with people. Prerequisite that would help is if you publish on LinkedIn. So if you have a blog and you can, it's anything related to marketing, entrepreneurship, just it could be really anything. As long as you have a blog, republish some of that stuff on LinkedIn, and that helps you build a base and credibility when people look you up, because people are going to look you up. So the 5 ways, or so another one more prerequisite is you should know your place in the world. If you are a up and coming blogger, or Alex, if you started your company 8 months ago, you have some credibility, you have some street cred, you've interviewed some really good people, and I'm not just saying that because you interviewed me, but I've listened to your podcast. I've seen you write, and it's really good. You've built up that brand, so you have a baseline. A lot of people, what they do is they go for the kill and they go immediately, I want to go write for Forbes. Well, guess what? Nobody cares about you. You don't have a voice because you haven't earned it yet. So build that voice, build that brand, and know that these things take time. I did this in about a year. I think people can do it in about 9 months, 6 to 9 months, if they follow the right processes and they wait. Patience is the key. So I'll just jump into it. And Alex, jump in with any questions, because having done this now, it sounds easy. So I want you to grill me. I don't care. I'll answer anything. So
Just on the personal brand front, then, so I've got SaaScribe, as I mentioned, we've got about 150 articles, not all written by myself. But I bought the domain alexduma.com as part of the personal brand digital citizenship. Should I actually have something more than just the domain and like sujanpatel.com, start to publish works on that as well? Is that going to help, or does it matter?
No, it doesn't really matter. Just work on having a really, really solid about page. You want to have your about page look like a speaker bio, a speaker page, or list all your accolades, who you've interviewed, how much traffic you get, whatever that makes you look good. Now, when you pitch people, why I'm going through these 5 steps is pretty much I'm helping or outlining how to build your resume. So it's kind of like when you're going to speak at conferences. You're not going to go and speak at TED, the main conference. You might start at local events and work your way up. So this whole premise is all about working your way up and building your profile. And then people ask me, how do I get started? Well, just start blogging. don't blog about what you want to blog about. Write about things that are relevant to your space, that are relevant to a category. So, first and foremost, the first step is to research the end goal. So, you want to research the categories you think you could fit in on Forbes, on Inc. Like, is it business? Is it freaking health, entertainment, whatever, right? And then you know, like that's what you know you need a gun for. So then you can kind of frame everything you do beforehand. So blog about that category and do your research. Use SEMrush to find keywords. Use what is it called? BuzzSumo to find out what's popular and what's actually a hot topic. Because at the end of the day, that is what matters the most, is that you talk about something that's that other people are interested in. So first and foremost, like tip number one is do your research. So like that's number one thing. Number two is start off at company or industry blogs. So when I started, I can give you an exact example. I started with Search Engine Journal. I started with my blog. I guest post. I reached out to sites like Social Media Today, Mention.com, all of these marketing companies that have blogs. And what that did was I built a base, and it built a base of writing externally. Now, I did this intentionally because I wanted to write content that will be shared a lot with somebody else's audience. So I was already on a kick to build my personal brand. This time around, with writing for like Search Engine Journal and things like that, I know they have a brand and they have a big audience. So I know my end goal was to make me look as good as possible. That means the more traffic, the more shares, all that stuff is going to help me look good. So that's why I decided to essentially write for them, and it worked, right? I wrote topics that I thought that audience would like, and they got hundreds of shares. And what I did was, like, smaller sites didn't get a lot of shares. So what I did was I actually spent like 50 or $100 and promoted the hell out of it. I did outreach. I bought Facebook ads. I paid for StumbleUpon and Outbrain, and I pretty much made sure these things are looking good on my resume. And I mean, not only that, they invited me back again because I actually busted my butt to get on there.
Yeah.
So whatever, I think you have your end goal in mind and you have your research. Now just figure out what you can aim for and target. Now, this is like guest posting and getting on Forbes is like a rehearsing for a TV show if you're an actor, right? Or not rehearsing, but like getting a gig. You're gonna get rejected 9 times out of 10, but you really only need the 1 or 2. Just know that the industry is small. There's maybe whatever industry you're in, there's maybe a few hundred places. So you can't get rejected and then go back again and not and get and win. So pitch accordingly. Pitch 1 or 2 and then crush it, and then whatever. So going back to the end goal, to build this resume, you really only need 3 or 4 successful posts. Everything after that really doesn't matter, because you need an email that you can send somebody, and your about page that says, my posts usually get X amount of traffic, or I get X amount of shares. So what I do is I typically, when I go for a pitch to large publications, I'll email them saying 1 or 2 sentences or 1 sentence about the idea I have, or like what I want to guest post or write for their site. 1 sentence about me, and then I say, you know what? Here's a few examples, and you bet you I'm gonna list my top 3 or 4 examples, right? And I always add a little thing saying, most of my posts get anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000, 10,000 shares. When somebody hears that, they're like, holy crap, that's a lot. And not even traffic, shares. So they assume, everybody knows that shares drive traffic. So when you get a lot of shares, people assume that you got even more traffic. So I'm speaking in a way different currency. And I'm like, the reason I say shares is also that these people might interpret it as, oh wow, this guy's measuring a completely different level than I've already been measuring. Like, what, I need to talk to this guy, or I leave some kind of what is it called? Some magic, or like kind of I leave them wanting more in my pitches. So I guess step number three is going to be refine and like really nail down your pitch. And that's going to be different for health. It's going to be different for any industry you do, but general business and marketing and whatnot, it really comes down to just having it short and sweet, and prove yourself who you are.
Okay. Excellent. And in terms of the, I guess you do the bio, then the actual pitch, right? You've got to have a good idea. I guess you've got to have maybe a kind of killer headline that you're going to write about and send them. Do you put your best ideas to Forbes, and maybe the other ones kind of on your own sort of blog, or tell me more about that.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. This is often overlooked or like not asked until you start to execute on this. Here, my approach, and it's just worked really well for me, is that I don't actually mention the idea in my initial pitch. I leave them wanting more, right? I leave them not judging me off of the idea I had. So at the end of the day, when you send an email out asking to do something, a cold pitch or whatever, people are judging you based off whatever you sent. They may look you up, whatever, right? So they're gonna judge you. I don't want them judging me on my idea. I want them judging me based off the stuff I've written. Because then if I add an idea to it, they're going to be judging me already on the stuff I've written. Am I qualified? Do I get enough traffic? And like, holy crap, I got to look at this article too. Is this any good? So I just say, I've got this great idea that I think will work well. So I leave a little bit of wiggle room with adding the word I think in the middle, but essentially I'm leaving them wanting a little more. And I'm putting all of the pressure on my successful articles to work for me. Who knows if that is going to work if you have 100 shares. But if you have 100 shares on your post, don't pitch Forbes. Go pitch the next company blog and make sure you have at least 3 to 5 wins with 1,000 or more shares and 10,000 plus views. That's really what you need to work for. And to be honest, this is not a month thing. This is a 3 to 6 month journey. It's going to take a while.
Yeah. Okay. So there's an entry level, as you say, in your expert opinion. 1,000 shares, 10,000 views is a good kind of benchmark to go.
Yep, exactly. And so here's the hierarchy of the world of publications. There's industry blogs and company blogs. Then there's those are like the lowest tier, and some sites like Buffer and HubSpot, Content Marketing Institute, they work their way up to be these bigger sites, which is good. So there is some exceptions to this, but then the next step up is third tier publications. What I mean by third tier publications, I hate to say it, but like business to community, that's a third tier publication. Huffington Post, that's a third tier publication. And sometimes these third tiers are harder than the second tiers. So the second tiers are Business Insider, Entrepreneur.com, sites like that. Then the first tier is sites like Inc., Forbes, Fast Company, what have you, New York Times. Now there's a secret magical tier, which is HBR. There is no one in this like secret tier that's like the top tier. There's no one site that fits it. It's whatever is the most impactful for your audience. So like, for example, if my audience is content marketers, what do content marketers think is the best resource out there? Whatever, even if it's Content Marketing Institute or HubSpot, shit, that's the best for them. Then that's what I need to write on. That's my secret tier. So sometimes the little trick here is sometimes that secret tier is actually easier to achieve than the first tier, second tier, whatever.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And how many articles have you written for today?
I lost count, probably well over 200. So
okay.
The trick.
Have you been able to measure the impact to Sujan Patel from doing that?
Yeah, so that brings me to, that's a great question. It brings me to I'm on tip number 4, I think. Sorry, the question's threw me up. Okay, so tip number 4 is, figure out what's the ROI. So first and foremost, any of the tiered publications, they want regular contributors most of the time. Um, so it's really, really tough and expensive, right? For like you mentioned, how do I measure this? Do I even have exposure? Guess what? Most of the stuff I write doesn't make me look good, doesn't really help me at all. It's really one every month, one out of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 that helps me. Like, for example, on Ink, I write 4 posts for them, meaning whatever is going to work really, really well for them, what's going to make me look good to the editors, aka get them traffic, their audience, and then I write 2 posts that are meaningful to me. So you might see me write about general entrepreneurship and then randomly write about content marketing. Well, content marketing is what is the money for me. It's what I want to brand myself as, and growth hacking and whatever. But I got to write stuff for them. So when you're writing for these big publications, most of the stuff is not going to work for you. But it's all compounding. So the more people see you and the more people kind of see your name passively, it works. It works in your favor and it's compounding. Now, every single blog post on these bigger publications and even guest posts, you can link internally to your content so you can get traffic. The funny thing is, most people think Forbes and Inc. are going to be, or like Fast Company, all these sites are going to be the dream place to get traffic. Actually, entrepreneur.com gets me the most traffic because they have a bigger audience and reach for my network, and then they also often get syndicated to MSN, to Time Magazine. So I can say now I've been on Time. I've blogged for Time Magazine because my content's been on there. So ROI perspective, it's not the biggest name that actually gives you the most traffic.
Okay. Okay. All right. So then, what's the fifth point? Then I mean, I
Yeah. So tip number 5. All right. So the last thing is find and to do this successfully and quickly, you got to find the people you want to be like. Find the people that are doing it well. So if you are a marketer, look at Neil, look at me, look at Larry Kim. Those guys crush it, right? They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a while, and then try to find their editor. Try to find who you can talk to that monitors what they're doing. Sometimes they'll be subtle. Other times you might just want to reach out to Larry. Hey, sorry, Larry, you're gonna get more emails here, but like you might want to just reach out to him or reach out to me and say, "Hey, who's your editor? You mind sharing?" Now, don't go for the kill. Always give 2-to-1 ratio when you're asking influence for anything. So you want me to do you a favor? Who the hell are you? Prove yourself. Offer me some help. Then maybe I'll offer you help. Because you got to think about these big guys. Influencers are gonna get asked this question all the time, right? Like, I can't tell you how many intros I have to say, dude, you're a good writer, but can't I can't bother my editor anymore, right? So
yeah.
the other thing is once you find that editor, and like I'll tell you, for most of these places you can because I found them. Like I didn't ask for intros, I found them. So I can't tell you how to find them because it's every industry is different, but I can tell you can find them, and then you just guess their email address. You can use either my tool, Content Marketer, to help find that email address, or you can use like emailhunter.co and literally guess it. I'll tell you a secret. It's either first name dot last name, first initial last name, first name last name, just last name at whatever the company name is, right? Sometimes, now keep in mind, sometimes like sites like Wall Street Journal are owned by a bigger company, so you want to pitch what that bigger company is, or you might not pitch, but you might want to look at like what's that bigger company, and look for that email address there. But really, put in a few hours of work and you'll find that email address. Use email validators to check if you're emailing the right person.
Yeah,
And
I think actually on the pretty much every single interview that we've done on the podcast, I've guessed the person's email address, and I get emails coming into me where they say, "Hey, how did you manage to speak to Mark Roberge or these other people?
yeah,
It's like, well, I guess their email address, and then I've got to write
Nice.
a short email asking
Yeah,
to do the show,
for
right?
sure.
That was pretty much it. So,
For sure. And that, you know what? It's really that easy, right? So what I just described, you're not going to get done in a month. Don't even bother, right? Aim for like a 6 month, 9 month, 12 month goal. Aim for one publication. Now, my secret is it's a burden to write all this stuff, right? Everyone thinks it's really glamorous. Well, guess what? I have to write 6 posts a week, regardless of if I want to or not, or I'm going to lose it. So, like, to stay on, if this is the top and this is your goal and I've reached the goal, it takes a lot more work to stay on top, right? So don't don't overdo yourself, right? Um, and like I said, promote the hell out of everything. Oh, one little like secret tip number 6, I guess, is I always end up doing a random secret tip because I have a lot to say, but it's really like just as you're doing, Alex, like build your brand using influencers, right? And so, if you want your post to get a lot more shares, quote people, interview them, don't do an expert roundup, get a little more creative, but when you mention people or tools or companies in a post, it's gonna do well. So when you're writing all this stuff and you're working your way to the top, make sure you reach out to everyone you mentioned and do this and I hate to plug in content marketer, but that's really like the premise of my tool is to help you promote your content and mention all the people you did. And I'll tell you, like, I've had a 4 to 5x increase in my traffic just by letting people know. And it's a simple email, like you said. And hey, like, if you can't spend the extra 10 minutes doing this or 30 minutes doing this, what's the point of writing it? Right? If you're not like, the ROI of 30 minutes to 4 or 5x your traffic is great.
yeah, it's an interesting point on the influencers front because certainly I've seen the results. Even looking at last week, for instance, our top performing post last week was like 25 top resources every salesperson needs,
Yep.
and it listed Kyle Porter from SalesLoft, Barbara Burge,
Yep.
Jason Ian. I could go on, but because it listed all these influencers, actually the influencers, they retweeted the article. There was more shares, so
Yep.
it resulted in higher traffic, higher views on that particular post. But do you think that if everybody deploys that strategy on content and it's just naming influencers all the time, they will get to a point where actually the influencer, like receiving emails or tweets on a daily basis saying I've been mentioned in 100 posts today, and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
give a shit.
Yeah. You got to use it a little sparingly. I mean, I try to write quality instead of quantity when it comes to using these types of strategies. So I try to do no more than once a month, and I don't go through the same industry or I won't go through the same people because you also think like the influencers get this all the time, but it's not that much work. When you email these guys, put a click to tweet button, and like they'll do it. Um, One of the ways I promoted my ebook, 100daysofgrowth.com, is that I mentioned 300 people, including examples and companies and all that stuff, and I pretty much emailed every single one of them. It was a 68 or 67% share rate. So everyone I emailed, 67% of them shared, and the open rate was almost like 80%. But anyways, make it easy, right? Make it easy. Get creative, right? Like I mentioned in an ebook, who lets people know this, right? So you don't have to do a blog post. You can do a video and you know don't make them work. Like people do an expert roundup, and that's great. But why not just grab quotes that they already say and prove a point, and then quote them that way?
Yeah, no, good point.
So, so cool, man. Well, thanks for asking these questions. Hopefully that helped. That's all I got. There's no real secrets. I mean, it's a lot of work, and there's those 6 tips to get there. Know your role. I would say at the end of the day, and aim for one, and then kind of work your way through there. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, or if you're on YouTube, just leave a comment here below.
Yeah,
Cool,
just
dude.
guess Sujan's email, right?
It, if you can guess it, I will freaking. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. I'll give you a hint. It's my name at myname.com.
yeah.
Awesome. All right, dude.
Right.